We're going to have a duet from Pam and from Albus, and then they are going to introduce themselves to you, and they're going to tell you about their involvement in times past with the mission.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my face relieved. How precious then that grace appeared, the hour I first believed. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Thank you, Pam. Right. I've got about 10 pages here. So, just two things. As Peter mentioned, the lady that objected to be called the Women of the Mission, her daughter sitting behind us here, Mrs. Wood, she used to do her nut over it when they said the women of the mission and the ladies of the church. And then the Boilermakers, they had a room downstairs, and the reason they were asked to leave was because they smoked. And the committee at the time said the mission was full of smoke and they couldn't seem to get rid of it. So they asked the Boilermakers, would they leave? I started in the mission. It was the late 50s, early 60s when I first came to the mission, and we didn't come upstairs at all. We only met in a chapel downstairs. And at the time, Mr. Wood, he was the pastor, and there was Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson, there was Mr. Clarkson and Mrs. Clarkson, and there was me. That was all that there was on the Sunday morning service. That was at 11 o'clock. But the evening service at 6:30, if you got here about 20 past 6, you couldn't get a seat. It was amazing the way it was. There was only about 6 or 7 of us in the mornings, and the place was full of an evening. As Peter mentioned, the mother church to this mission, this was only a mission hall for the church on the main Newchester Road. And it was only when it came into the United Reformed Church, and the minister retired from that church and they closed it down, that we become St. Paul's Road Mission Church. Mr. Wood became the pastor, and we went from stent to stent in a way. But I became an elder in the 60s, and me and Mr. George Atkinson at the same time accepted eldership. And there was a man here on the committee. He was the secretary of the mission, and Mr. Bert Alt. And he took ill. He was ill for a couple of weeks, And Mr. Wood was very persuasive. He asked me if I would like to take the secretary's job on. He said it'll only be for a couple of weeks. As soon as he's fitting well, he'll be back again. So 30 years later, and I'm still doing the job. I'm still doing the job. But then when Mr. Wood retired, we had a Mr. Eddie Thomas. He took over as pastor at St. Paul's Road. And after Eddie was here and his wife, Charlotte, they run the Ladies' Fellowship. But after Mr. Thomas left, we had a Mr. Brian, no, what was his name? Derek Adamson. Now, when he took over, Derek didn't like using the chapel downstairs. He felt that the name was St. Paul's Road Mission Church, and he thought that this big room was being wasted and that it should be used for the people to worship the Lord. So he decided to do something about it. So what they did, they came up and they built this platform as you see it now, him and his son and a couple of other volunteers. They smoothed all the floor over, laid sheets of plywood down, and laid the carpet on. We started our services upstairs. We had all our morning and evening services up here, because previous we only ever had funeral services up here, and we had a couple of weddings, I think, up here as well, but and a couple of funerals. But what we had about 6 or 7 lengths of hessian floor covering, and one went along the back, one down that side, one down the middle, one down that side, and one across the front here. When it was a wedding, the bride and groom, or the bride and her father, or whoever was giving her away, walked along there, down there, and here, and the wedding, and then they walked up the middle and out. If it was a funeral, the funeral came along the back, down here, the coffin was placed here, and then they walked up that way and out. But as well as that, as I said, Derek, he left, and then we had a couple of elders that took over. We had Mr. Stuart Clark, and then we had Ted Kirkpatrick. Now, you never knew what you were going to get with these two men. We had a Christmas carol service, and Stuart Clark was in charge of this, by the way, and he's out of the problem. He's leading from up here. So he decided that he would have 3 elders to sing "We Three Kings of Orient Are." So he picked me, Ted Kirkpatrick, and Bill Devlin. And we're standing across the back here, and the place was quite full because it was a carol service. I'm all right singing my part, so is Ted Kirkpatrick. But his turban kept falling over his eyes. So I don't know.
The reason why it was a turban, he had to give me a tea towel because he'd left it at home.
But anyway, there were two great men here, and we were made up with them, Stuart Clark, and we miss him very much, and Ted Kirkpatrick. And then we come and our brother Peter has taken over, and he practically does everything here. But you know, it's always good to know that when you come in St. Paul's Road Mission, you're coming into the Lord's house, and we make it very plain to people. They're welcome to come in here. We always have a welcome on the door, and they come in. And people have asked me over the years, why is this room next door called the Inasmuch room? And the reason it was called that was because in the scriptures, the Lord said, "In so much as you done it unto me." And that's why they named that room the Inasmuch room, because during the war, of course I wasn't here then, but during the war, they used to give food out and clothes and what have you to help the neighbourhood, the people that were getting bombed. And that's they organised it all from that room next door. I don't think I've got much more to tell you, but the elders' meetings, now that was something to behold. We had the elders' meetings about once a month, and the thing was that we agreed on a lot of things, but I always remember Mr. Derek Adamson wanted to do the kitchen downstairs. He wanted to make it to what it is now. It's brilliant down there, the kitchen. And the first elders' meeting we had, it was decided we'd leave it till the next meeting. You know what elders' meetings are like, you know what they... And the next meeting we had, we decided we would leave it to the next one. So the third one was decided unanimously by all the elders except one. And that's why I could never understand this, because I'm the secretary and I'm writing the minutes. And the only one that voted against it was myself. And I can't understand to this day why I did. But anyway, the work was done, and that's it. Whether I liked it or not. But we got a lot of work done here between, as I say, Stuart Clark, Ted Kirkpatrick, Peter McGrath. And just before I finish this part, we have meetings here every Sunday morning and evening, 11 o'clock and 6:30. And the one man, he'd probably, if he gets near to me, he'd probably kick me, but if it wasn't for Bill Devlin, we wouldn't be able to have it, because Bill books the speakers. And he's practically got to the end of this year, I think, maybe into next year. But he books the speakers, and his phone must be red hot. I don't know who's paying for it, but he rings everybody, and we are so well served by the servants of the Lord. We get the gospel preached here both morning and evening. Nothing added to it, nothing taken away. So Bill Devlin does a great job here, and so does Peter McGrath. So that's... Do you want me to carry on with the Girls' Brigade report? Do you want me to do that now? See, you know, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. Right, got all the clocks. I've got all the clocks stopped so that you don't know what time it is. When I was asked to present the Girls' Brigade report, I asked Peter, should I wear a dress? And he said, no, they won't notice. They won't notice, he said. He said you could borrow his. Anyway, now, so somebody else on the committee said, speak in a high voice. No. And then somebody said, ask the congregation to close their eyes and think. Imagine that you're a woman. And somebody else said, no, don't ask them to close their eyes, because half of them might fall asleep. So you'll just have to put up with me. By the way, I should have told you, you know, you're very lucky to have me here tonight. No, you are. Think about it. Think what day it is. If Tranmere Rovers had won a few more games, I'd have been down at Wembley. The Girls' Brigade, they met at Ionic Street School, around the corner. They met there on a Wednesday evening and a Friday. They had band practice around there at the school, and George Atkinson used to go and teach them how to play the band. My two girls were in the band. Arlene was a drummer and Janet was a bugler. So they were in the band, they were involved. And there was others. And then when they had their displays, they used to use this room upstairs. Now, as I say, we only had them strips of Hessian. And the girls used to use this room upstairs for the displays. The families that sat all the way around the wall, and the march in the band was here, and all the games and everything that they did was done in the centre of the room, and it was brilliant. And then, as I say, we used it for carol service and we used it for the harvest as well. We had the harvest festival services always up here. But the Girls' Brigade were involved. They had a Sunday morning service, and they used one of the rooms downstairs, just as you come in through them doors. The first room on your right, the Girls' Brigade used that room for a Sunday morning. Their service started at 10:15 and finished just before 11 o'clock. And then, as I say, we had the service at 11 o'clock. Now, there was a boys' brigade here as well. And Mr. Wood was the president of the boys' brigade, and Mrs. Wood was the president of the girls' brigade. Now, we used to go to camp. When I say we, there was Harold Blythen, was an elder. Mrs. Blythen was the captain of the girls' brigade. He was her husband. There was their son Lee. There was myself, and there was a couple more. And we used to go to camp at Penmamar. It was great. We'd been all places, but Penmamar was the favourite. And we used to go on a Friday afternoon. The men would go on a Friday afternoon and put the camp up. And when the girls came out on the Saturday, everything was laid on for them. And the boys from Bebington used to have the second week. It was a 3-week camp, and the boys from Bebington had the second week. The boys from Upton had the third week. And we used to put the camp up, and the boys from Upton took the camp down and brought it home. We have health and safety today, don't we? Everything you do is health. When we went on the Girls' Brigade, we went by Harding's luxury furniture vans. 50-odd girls in the back of a furniture van. It's not nice, you know. But they seemed to get on all right, and they arrived at the camp all right. There was none of them broken legs or broken arms or anything like that. The one that I remember at Penmamar especially was coming back one year, and we were stuck in the back of this van, and some of the little ones were right at the back by the tailgate. And England were playing West Germany in the final of the World Cup, 1966. And the girls were all saying, "What's the score?" And they were writing it down. "What's the score?" And holding it over the tailgate for the cars coming up. How they were going to tell us what the score was, I don't know. But they want, you know. Harding's luxury travel we've travelled by. It was brilliant. But you see all this? This has come all the way from Australia, because I'm going to tell you the girl's name now. Linda Roberts. Linda Boys was her name. And she was in the Girls' Brigade. And I picked out a couple of the things that she said, and then I'll be finished. She says her Sunday school teacher was Pam. Now, I don't know whether that was you, Pam. Was it? Her Sunday school teacher was Pam. And it says, as she got older, she noticed that the Girls' Brigade met at the school in Ionic Street, and she wanted to join, so she joined the Girls' Brigade. And then it says here, we used to go on summer camp. We had so much fun on the summer camps. I don't doubt she did, because they all did. Took advantage of the men. She writes here, this made me smile. She writes here, when we got to camp, they were taught to erect a tent. I've never seen any girls erect a tent. The tents were always up. And I must tell you that before reading it, when we got there on when the girls got there on the Saturday morning, before they come, we got a big lorry load of straw. And when the girls came on the Saturday, the first job they did when they were allocated, whichever tent they were in, they were given a long Hessian bag, and they had to fill it with this straw for a palliasse for the bed. You've never seen anything like it in your life. But anyway, she says here, fill a palliasse with straw to sleep on. Now, I will leave it to your imagination as to how she spelt that word, palliasse. I'm not going to say any more. We had an old chap there, and he stayed for the 3 weeks, and his name was Grice. and we always called him Grandad Grice. Everybody called him Grandad Grice. He was brilliant. He helped in the kitchen. He helped round the camp. He was a brilliant old man, and he was great to be around. And I think it was Peter that mentioned walks. We had a Mr. Leith that was captain of the Upton Boys Brigade, and he was with us because he stayed for the 3 weeks. And he used to say, all right, ladies, we'll go for a short walk. It was about 5 or 6 miles. They come back, finished, out of the game. I must tell you this as well too. The Baptist church down on the Newchester Road, they had a few girls in the girls' brigade, but there weren't enough to get a group together for a camp. So they asked if they could come with our girls. So we said yes. And I think there was only about a dozen of them, maybe not even that number. But there was one family there, the Browns. They lived in Rockferry here. But there was 3 or 4 girls. And believe you me, when they were at camp, you knew they were at camp. And poor Harold Blything, they mithered the life out of Harold, everything they wanted. Mr. Blything, but he loved every minute of it. But the Browns girls were the life and soul of the party the whole week. And it was great to have them, and it was great to have the girl from the Baptist church there. I'll just finish with what she says here. She wrote something at the bottom, and I'll just finish with this. I will forever be grateful to the years I spent in the Girls' Brigade. It helped to provide me with the stability I needed in my teenage years. It has always held a special place in my heart. I am sure it contributed to my career of nursing, to which I am eternally thankful. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'll go and take my dress off now and be comfortable. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Pam, and I would like to say thank you to the Lord for St Paul's Road Mission of 150 years old. My mum used to say, the good old mission. She sent me when I was just a little toddler to Sunday school. You spend more time in the mission than you do at home, she used to say. And thank the Lord I did. Sunday school teachers were Miss Brown, Miss Hill, Mrs. Fleming, Mrs. Blything, Mrs. Morton, and of course not forgetting Mr. Wood and Mr. Kelly. I loved hearing the stories of Jesus, and we got a little text to take home, which I saved each week. The gospel was preached, and still is. I can say I was born again through hearing the gospel of salvation. The Lord says in his word, if you seek me with all your heart, you will find me. And I am so glad I found him. He is my saviour, my keeper, and my friend. He is so wonderful, and heaven has many people that came through those doors to the mission. Because Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Trust in him, and he will never leave you. I am so grateful for the gift of salvation from him who was, who is, and which is to come. Thank you, St Paul's Road Mission of 150 years old, for showing me the way of salvation. May I leave you with this thought that helped me many days. In the midst of pain, he will be your saviour. God knows how to put together broken lives. Thank you for listening to me.
It's my turn now. I'm just out doing a history of the Sunday school. but I can't go back as far as Peter did, 1866, because the nearest I could get was in June 13th, 1915. And there was an anniversary here for the Sunday school. I've no idea what the anniversary was. But all the fruit and the flowers which were collected were to be sent to the wounded soldiers at the workhouse infirmary at Hyde Tranmere. And that's St Catherine's Hospital, which, when I was looking through these notes for the Sunday school and whatnot, it's amazing some of the things that you can learn from that. And also it was given from the flowers to the Borough Hospital, Birkenhead, which is not there now. But in 1934, at the teachers' meeting, it was agreed that the following donations were given. And this is in old money, pound, shillings and pence. Dr. Bernardo's home, 10 shillings. The General Hospital, £1. The Sunday School Union, 5 shillings. The Convalescent Home, 10 shillings. The Whittle Sunday School Council, 2 and 6. Foreign Missions, £1. The Sailors' Friends Society, 5 shillings. And the Gresford Colliery Fund, 10 and 6pence. And for those that don't know, but the Gresford Colliery disaster occurred on the 22nd of September 1934, which is near Wrexham. And there were 266 men and boys killed, and there was only 11 bodies recovered, and the rest are still entombed in that mine. But in January 1935, the Sunday school meeting, they agreed and wrote to the Chief Constable regarding the safety of children crossing Newchester Road due to the amount of traffic, especially on Sundays, and mentioned an introduction of a speed limit of 30 miles per hour. Now, I've no idea when the 30 miles per hour came in, but it's probably one thing, but if those people could see the traffic on there now, they would be amazed. And in 1936, the Sunday school outing had been held at Overton Hills. And from a financial point of view, the expenditure had been in excess of the fund. And it was hoped to recoup the fund by means of subscription from members of the church. In 1939, Mr. Kelly was superintendent with the following teachers, and some of them might know: Miss May Brown, Miss Lucy Hill, Miss Gladys Pimlett, Mrs. Davis, Miss Stockton, Mr. Clarkson, and of those names, Miss Hill, Miss Pimlett and Miss Brown were Sunday school teachers here, and they were here for over 40 years. Now when you think 3 misses, they dedicated to the work, to this mission. And May Brown, who was my next door neighbour actually, she was here for over 50 years. And on Saturday the 22nd, 1939, a Sunday school picnic was held at Raby Mere, and there was 126 children went, but owing to bad weather and ground being too bad, the races were run at Victoria Park on Tuesday the 1st of October. So they never let the children out. In 1940 in June, the Sunday school treat was cancelled owing to the recent enemy activities, and that was when the war was on. But in 1941, which was still during the war, this being wartime, Mr. Kelly, superintendent, undertook to convey 70 children from their mission to Raby Mere on a double-decker bus, which Peter mentioned, at a charge of £2.10 shillings. They left the mission at 1:30 and commenced the return journey at 9 o'clock. Now imagine all those children for that time at Raby Mere. It doesn't bear thinking about. But I'm sure perhaps the children were a bit better behaved than they are now, perhaps, I don't know. But in 1946, the children's school outing was to Thursterson. 2 Kirk Corporation buses at £5, 120 teas at 1 and 3pence, 12 adult teas at 1 and 8pence. Tea, white bread and brown bread, butter, jam sandwiches, followed by assorted cakes. And in 1942, the Sunday school outing went to West Kirby, and they went by steam train. Now, I've no idea where the steam train, not in my time, I don't remember, but they used the hall at West Kirby's Presbyterian Church. In 1948, there were 95 children in the Sunday school, and in 1951, there were 65 in the Sunday school. In 1958, I come across it that John Pope was a Sunday school teacher, started here in 1958. It's in the minutes. But in 19, he's going to preach, give a word after. And where was it? There were 150 children attending church and Sunday school in this mission in 1958. There were 31 in the Boys' Brigade, 28 in the Life Boys, and 45 in the Girls' Brigade. And Mr. Trotter was the superintendent. In 1971, in a lesson of the flood, a teacher asked a class of 7-year-old girls, why was the window put in the roof of the ark and not in the side? The teacher was astonished to hear one child, please, miss, 'cause of the giraffes. That's in the minutes, that. And in 1972, the teachers within Sunday school were Mr. Wood, Mr. Watson, Mr. Martin, Lee Blything, Mrs. Wood, Mrs. Watson, Mrs. Martin, Miss Brown, Miss Hill, Miss Pimlett, and Sandra Blything. And in 1976, there were 51 children in the Sunday school. I became a Sunday school teacher in 1976, and in 1983, Mr. Wood resigned as superintendent in the Sunday school. Mind you, I think he did everything in this church, every department he was involved in, plus all the things that he did do. Fantastic pastor. And I took over as superintendent and Mrs. Martin as secretary. And in 1982, we altered the time from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 12:15 to 1:15. And between 1983 and 1990, we averaged about 25 children each week in this. And we went on outings and children's parties every year. In 1984, we invited members of the church and the Sunday school on an outing to Frith. We had 74 adults and 21 Sunday school and 2 coaches. And in the middle of the top picture there, there's all the people that went, and there's also all the names of the people that were there. In 1987, we went to Colwyn Bay with 30 children and teachers. The teachers were Mrs. Martin, Mrs. Fleming, John Fleming, Pam Bazzoni, Pauline Heffy, Martin Jones and myself. In 1991, I lost 3 teachers, but I managed to use Pam Bazzoni, John Fleming, Louise McCloy, Susan McAllister, Pauline Heffy, Martin Jones, Keith Withy, and all these had come through the Sunday school and were saved, most of them by me. But this was okay until 1995, when I lost 1 through bereavement, 2 left to go to the Salvation Army, and 2 left for college and university. This left me with 2 teachers, and sometime I was on my own, which is not allowed now. So I had to close the Sunday school in 1995. But in 1999, we opened a children's work called the Adventure Club on a Sunday at 12:15 to 1:15. And it was myself and Mr. Ted Kirkpatrick. And the staff were Mrs. Johnson, Colin Withy, Helen Withy, and we kept open until 203, when Ted became ill and Colin and Helen left. That was roughly the Sunday schools. Just one other note. In 1998, I took over as the rota for the Sunday services. You won't be doing it for long. And at the time, we had 4 pastors in this church, and it was absolutely great because I only had to find 4 speakers a month, because one of the pastors, I'll do it, and then, which helped a great deal for me. But I've still got 4 speakers coming since 1998, and 3 of them are here tonight. And we have 2 services on a Sunday, which is 104 speakers you have to find. But I'm grateful to the speakers that are willing to come and preach here, and there are quite a few I can see here tonight. I'd like to say thank you very much for coming to this church to preach. Thank you. Thanks, Pete.